Brooklyn Sweeties and beyond. I'm going to walk you through that sugar cookie recipe, which you can find on our website, sweetlybrooklyn.com, under our blog, and it's titled Fine Art Cookies. Yeah, let's get started. So you want to start with the butter, and you're going to do 1 cup butter, and pop it into that bowl. 2 sticks. That's your butter, and we're going to cream it. Now you can do this if you have a stand mixer, or you can use a hand mixer, but for some things it's just really kind of easier for cookie dough to use, a spatula or wooden spoon and cream that butter until it's kind of nice and fluffy. We're gonna add the sugar. I like to have all of my stuff measured out in advance, so that you have it ready and it leaves less room for mistakes. We're gonna use organic sugar, 1 cup, because that's all that they had left at the store. But you can use regular granulated sugar if you have that at home. Stores are running super low these days. Gotta use all your muscles. All right, now you got 1 egg. We're gonna crack it. I would suggest doing it over a bowl so you can make sure that there's no pieces of shell in there, because those are not that tasty. Oh, I did forget one ingredient. I'm gonna mix that egg in until it's fully incorporated, fully mixed in. Take a little bit. I forgot to measure out the vanilla. Did that real quick. So this recipe is going to make about 15-20 cookies. Just really depends on how big your cookie cutter is and the size of the shape of the cookie. We're going to do 2 teaspoons vanilla. I think with all the baking supplies that are no longer on the shelf in Brooklyn, I feel rest assured that everybody's making some super tasty things. Or maybe baking some homemade bread. See? Looks nice and kind of creamy and fluffy. Colored. Try not to get the dough everywhere. So when it looks like this, you can start adding your flour. Now I usually add a little bit at a time, mix it in, because it can get it can just fly around, make it look like your kitchen snowed. So kind of folding it in, using the muscles. If you were mixing this with a hand mixer or a stand mixer, it's kind of at low to medium speed. Then I'm going to add in the 1/2 teaspoon of salt, that last bit of flour. Mix it up. Whoa! I think it's messy. Probably need a bigger bowl. We are almost done. This cookie dough is super easy, super tasty. All right. So usually with gloves, I'm gonna go in there, give it a little knead. And then, if you're doing this with your hands at home, if you were the only person eating them, it's probably really quite all right, but they're going in the oven, so it will bake off the germs. But we like to keep it clean and sanitary, so we recommend using gloves when you're baking for others. There we go. You can either use plastic wrap or parchment. I like to use parchment. And I put that on the cookie dough right there. Go off to the side and press it down. And then we're gonna hold it. And this needs to go in the fridge for, usually I do about 2 hours to cook it. So the fridge is on, it might be a little loud, but I'm gonna show you how to roll out cookie dough. You just need a little bit of flour. No, that wasn't 2 hours, but I had some chilling anyways, so it's still a little cold. So when you don't want it to be fresh out of the fridge when you roll it out. You also don't want it to be too soft, so. And we're gonna cut rectangles and circles. So if you don't need a cutter for the rectangle, but if you have one, I think mine is usually 3 by 5. But you can use a knife just to cut a straight edge, and a ruler if you want to be, 100% sure it's a straight edge, but you can eyeball it. And then I usually roll the cookie dough out to that's about half. So you can do 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch. We're gonna do half right now. And I'm just gonna cut a couple cookies out because I baked some off already. I don't need a lot more. And then you can also use, this is about a 3-inch round cutter. I use this side, but this side is for, something else. If you want to use that side, you can. And you're just going to cut, we're going to cut a couple circles on a 1/4 sheet pan already. And you do not have to put anything on there because there's a lot of butter in these cookies. So for this one, I'm going to just eyeball it. And again, this is about 3 by 5. And this is about the size that I make them because I use a small miniature 5-inch easels for them to kind of use them as decoration. And put that right there. And then the rest of this dough, I'm going to roll back out. The less times you roll out the dough, the better, because of the gluten in it. It gets more pliable and it gets more flexible, and before you know it, your cookies do not keep the shape that you want them to be. So you see that sticking to my rolling pin, so I'm gonna add a little bit of flour. So the less rolling, the better. So again, 1/2 inch thick. I'm going to cut a couple more fine art cookies. So these can be, you can make bigger ones if you want to invest in a huge painting. Not all artists worked small. Usually people work a lot bigger. So, all right, so we're gonna put the oven, oh, this one's not straight. We're gonna put the oven on 350 and we're gonna bake these off for about 10 to 12 minutes until they're golden around the edges. All right, cool. So I'm gonna tell you how to make the royal icing while our cookies are cooling. I took them out of the oven and they look good. I should go get them, but they're over that away. So we're gonna use the mixer. You can use a hand mixer if you have a stand mixer. You can use a stand mixer, but you're gonna need to whip these egg whites, 2 egg whites, or if you need a lot of royal icing, you just want to double the recipe that I posted on the website, sweetlybrooklyn.com. So you're gonna mix these egg whites until they get nice and poofy. And I'm gonna turn the camera off for a little bit because no one needs to hear that for 5 minutes, right? So we're gonna mix these until they're nice and poofy. Switch the mixer to lower speed, and we're gonna add the powdered sugar, 2 cups, gradually, otherwise it will look like it snowed in your kitchen, and your parents will not like that. We're going to mix this until it is like stiff peaks start to form. Look like this. I'm going to add a little bit of lemon juice, 1/2 teaspoon. much helps make it harden. Troll hair. That looks good. So we have our royal and it's troll hair like, and we have our cookies, and this is how I like them. It's a little golden around the edges. We are going to use just the white today to fill in these three, and then these two are going to be a different cookie that I'm going to show you tomorrow, because what we need to do is we need to put a little bit of our royal in the bowl, and we're going to add a tiny little bit of water to this, because we just need to make it a little bit thinner consistency. Now you can always add more water. What you can't do is take away water. So I encourage you to just add a tiny little splash, and you're going to mix it in. And so one of the things that you might have trouble, or you might not have in your kitchen at the moment, is a piping bag, which is something that looks like this. It's hard to come by unless you're at the cake store. Michael's does have them, but in Brooklyn, Michael's is closed, and I think in the rest of New York. So you can use a Ziploc bag, a small one, little sandwich bag, and you're going to basically fill it up, and you're going to then cut the tip off, very tip off, when you're ready to pipe. So you're going to fill the bag with a little bit of royal, and you just want to close it, and then you can just cut a tiny little bit off that edge and use it as a piping tip. So royal icing does dry when you leave it out in the air, so whatever we're not using, we need to cover up too. I'm going to fill my piping bag. Cut. So what you're going to do is, what I always do is I outline it, and then you can flood that in, and usually you can use a toothpick, or you can use the tip of your bag to smooth it out. So that it then needs to dry smooth, and you have to work pretty fast because this will dry fairly quickly. And you could add a tiny little bit more water to this, but it will smooth out as it dries. So just fill it in. Like I said, we're gonna leave the circular ones for tomorrow. So this royal needs to dry probably at least 12 hours, but usually cookies need to dry overnight, and then you can paint on them. So we are prepping our canvases. All right, so fill in your cookies, and we are going to let these dry overnight, and we will see you tomorrow. Hello, it's been almost 12 hours since we put royal icing on our rectangles, our canvases. So I'm going to show you a couple different cookies that we're going to royal ice, the circles that we didn't do last night, and then we're going to do what I think is one of the most fun parts is we're going to be painters. So grab your paintbrushes and your palettes, put a little of that edible food paint on your palettes, or gel if you had it. You cannot use real markers or real paint for these cookies. Not so tasty. So here we go. So before we get started with our paintings, you can see that I did another self-portrait. This one kind of looks a little bit more like me because I have a hat on. Picasso is one of my favorites, as you can see, and Van Gogh. I gotta finish Starry Night. But before we do that, we're gonna work on these two cookies, and then I also, with my same size circle cutter, late last night I decided to make some palettes. So I made like little Pac-Man shapes. So I took the circle cutter and cut out little ones, and I filled those in with some white royal icing also. And then these are my my canvases from last night, and they are completely dry, ready for some paint. So we're gonna do that in a minute. But these two first, because we had to do some dry. So I have a few colors of royal icing that I put in piping bags. You can see I made a skin tone color and have some red, black, white, and a blue. And I might need one more color, but I'm gonna start with that. So I'm gonna fill these two, and they get dried out. So I'm gonna fill these two circles in all the way. And these are gonna be my mystery artist. And if you know me, probably can guess who this is going to be, because she is probably my favorite artist. Until we do the next step. So I'm gonna put those aside for a little bit. And so for our paintings, we have these cookies that we can do whatever we want with it. And I want to encourage you to be creative. I have sought inspiration in Picasso and Van Gogh, and really can do any of your favorite artists, and or you can just paint something from your head. So do what you want to do. So these are edible ink markers, and I got them online, and you can get a bunch of different brands, a bunch of different colors. I particularly like these ones. I forget what the brand is, because they have two ends. They have a brush tip, and then the other end is for really kind of fine pointillism work or fine point work. So those are my preferred ones, but they have them at Michael's and all over. So really, you can use them just like you use markers. And then on my paint palette here, I have some white, and I have my primary colors. I do like to mix my own colors, but you can, at the store, a lot of times you can use gel, or you can use a tiny little bit of the regular food coloring to put in here, and that's food coloring is already super watery, so you mount my paint, so you can see that it's a little thicker, and you can thin it out, and then you can also really go in and mix whatever colors that you might need. So I need a tiny little bit of darker green for my Van Gogh. When you're doing these cookies, you have to think about it like watercolors. You have to think about the white and where you want it before you put stuff in, because you can take, think about the white around here and the stars and the moon, because you can take the paint off, but it becomes harder to take it off than to just, and then if you were doing this on paper, it would be harder to take the paint off. But you can use, just like the extracts or the vodka or the gin, you can use that to take any kind of paint off that you might need. A little orange. So think about which ones that you want to do, and I would love to see them if you want to post them on Facebook or Instagram and tag the shop. I'm going to go to this one, and I'm going to do, I think, a Rothko. And so he really liked the luminance of colors. So you can paint, you can layer the colors on top, you can let it dry for a little bit, come back to it. So it's rough. It's cute. Keith Haring. So these markers are super cool. So when you are done with these and you let them dry, the ink on here doesn't take that long to dry, so you can pretty much eat them right away. They will, a little bit of this will come off on your tongue, so you will quickly have a masterpiece on your tongue. These sugar cookies are my favorite to dip in tea or coffee, or just to have straight up, but they are really tasty. And they last a few days, especially if they're wrapped in Tupperware or in a plastic bag or something like that. So, oh, here's the other Baker Pan is another brand that's good, but they just have like a thicker tip. So those ones are not my go-to. So I'm gonna leave this one, and we're gonna go back to our Fritas real fast, and I'll let that one dry. Then go before I add more to it. So we're gonna back to the Fritas, and I'm gonna add some hair. So a little bit of black. Did in her hair, and I did a split down the middle. And the black is a little bit thicker than the skin tone color. So the thicker the royal icing, the more it will have a bit of a texture to it when it's dry. If you want that. 2 little eyes here. 1 eyebrow. She's famous for her unibrow. And a little Bo Peep mouth, I think. You can also do some flowers in her hair because she used to like to wear the flowers around. I'm gonna let the black dry just a little bit. For these guys, I'll show you real quick. Maybe just enough, and to a paintbrush down the center of my palette. So I'm gonna make some green, some yellow, maybe a little purple, and I'll add those on there. I don't have them right now, so I'll mix those in a little bit. And I'm gonna finish my Fritas, my palettes, and I'm gonna do some paintings. So check back on our Instagram. We'll post the rest of our paintings, and we're gonna sell them in the shop.